Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report, coming to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, if you get on your high horse today and pontificate, I promise I will not rip up your speech.
Well, you know what, for everybody, we should have turned the equipment on here about 5 minutes ago because Kevin got on a little rant here about politics, and it was interesting. I should have put that button without you knowing and have it broadcast out there. You were fired up.
Well, I mean, I'll just say it again. Like, I'm just no longer equipped to handle politics. Like, I enjoy politics. You know, I'm concerned about it, but the political game has changed to the point where nobody works together. Like, I'm an old person who remembers when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, two people who were polar opposites politically, got together and came up with a compromise to extend the life of Social Security. You know, I remember when Ted Kennedy, a diehard liberal, was friends with a lot of conservative Republicans, and they could get together and make laws. They would give and take and compromise, and we can't do that anymore. We just have to be. The divisiveness of the State of the Union was just ridiculous. Where
the sad thing is, it's become like part of the strategy too. Like it
is. Yeah, and on one hand we have Donald Trump, and in national health care is an issue for me. I have a daughter with a difficult illness, and so I've long followed that. And on one hand, Donald Trump is saying, well, we're going to save pre-existing condition, and we're going to try to get cheaper prescriptions. And yet, there's a bill that the Democrats passed that's sitting in the Senate they won't address because not because they may or may not like the bill, but because of the politics. They don't want to do anything that the Democratic Congress, gave to them. So it's just the politics of it all that, are really just bothering me. And I almost feel like I can't participate anymore because I'm not mentally equipped to handle it.
It's like you don't want. It's almost like you don't want to be a part of it because.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. You no longer want to be part of the political, process. And then, the inefficiency of what happened in Iowa, it's just absurd. Like, how do you even, explain that? And in the National Hockey League, GMs get fired for being that inefficient. So there's no doubt about it.
And now that extends the cycle too, right? Because now we, just like you and I are talking, we kind of removed ourselves from it. We don't want to participate anymore. So now when it comes time to vote, they just continue on. The same thing just happens.
No, I know. Well, I feel like I don't want to, but I know it's my civic duty, as you do, and we'll stick our nose into it because that's who we are. But it is. But anyway, let's talk about something a little more positive, which is the performance of Joe Thornton. And it's funny, you sent me a text this morning about what we should talk about, and you said Joe Thornton, and that was number one on my list as well. Yeah. And here's my take, and I really want, as a former player, I really want to get your take on this because I'm just basically spitballing, but I've always had the impression that Joe Thornton has really never gotten his due as a player. And my theory on it is because he's a big guy. We've always expected him to be sort of a big guy player. And by that, I mean to go to the net, go to the hard areas and score goals. Big guys score goals. They get in there and they muck it up and they get in front of the net and all that. But that's not Joe's game. No. Joe is a finesse player. He's playing a game that's better suited for players that are 5'11", 195 pounds. He's a great passer. He's creative. He finds the open holes. He can make that pass that you don't see coming. He knows where everyone is on the ice. And because of that, we don't appreciate that he has 1,500 points in 1,620 games.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a great point. I didn't even realize it until this morning. I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about how he had 1,500 points. Who he reminds me of? An old player. I don't know if a lot of people remember him or not, but remember Jean Beliveau played with the Montreal Canadiens, right? That big guy that played almost like a gentleman, and this really doesn't relate when you think about hockey to play like a gentleman, but that is Joe Thornton too. Like he really, to me, if I look at him, and I would go way back with Joe when I was working with IMG in the agent business, and we ultimately ended up representing Joe, and we had to sit in his family's house to say, listen, we really, he was his first overall pick in the draft. This big kid is projected to have a great career, got drafted by the Boston Bruins, and I remember sitting there talking to him. You could just tell he was that special guy too, like very polite and considerate of everybody around him, his family. Here we were trying to convince him to have us represent him, but he was just like nice to us, and the family was the same way. So it's like he's one of those guys that everybody wants to see do well too. He's, and I think probably what hurts him is a little bit, he's never won a Stanley Cup. That's
for sure.
Great player. So
to me, that's always been sort of an unfair standard. Some of it is just simply out of your control.
Yep, totally.
Especially in the the system. Like, you can't be a free agent until you're 27. So the first 9 years of your career are sort of obligated to one team, unless if you're lucky enough to get on a good team, and you can influence that by playing well and helping. But
you look at Jack Eichel right now too in Buffalo. I mean, and I don't make it just doesn't seem that they've really got it going. I mean, Connor McDavid in Edmonton too. Hopefully they make the playoffs this year, but it's the same kind of thing. You're
right.
Dead on, right? Great hockey players, but so far in their careers they haven't been able to do much in the playoffs.
Well, and what I've in fact, Joe Thornton is a perfect example. I have said, for years, are you trying to tell me that if Joe Thornton was on the Los Angeles Kings when they were winning, that they wouldn't have won?
Yeah.
Or if he was on the Blackhawks when they were winning, they wouldn't have won? Well, of course not. That's just a silly, argument when people start to say, well, he's not a winner.
Yeah.
Well, he can be a winner.
Totally.
He just needs the right circumstances. But I looked at a couple of things. He's not really been a 20-goal scorer in a long time. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to point out that early in his career, he had 6 consecutive years when he scored 20 or more goals. So he was at the start of his career, and then he had a 5-year span when he had 92 points, 114, 96, 86, and 89. And 2 seasons ago, he was a 51-point scorer, which in today's NHL, a 50-point scorer is, a pretty good hockey player. Yep. Given his age, it's remarkable. And, I think, Joe kind of knows that he's run out of track in San Jose. And I see from the local beat writers, they're starting to suggest that he's ready, even though he has a full no trade clause. To go elsewhere. And boy, the team I'd like to see him go to, and it's not exactly what they need, would be the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, like I said, it doesn't really fit their needs. They don't need a playmaker, but I just think he's a good hockey player. He's a creative hockey player. He plays the wing. Would he score now if that was his role for the rest of this season?
Well, for me, it's not as much even what he's could do on the ice for a team. I think it's that attitude that he's got too. He's that guy that he's been through so much. He doesn't seem like he gets rattled by any situation. He's played for Canada in the Olympics, and he's gone to the finals with San Jose. He's an older guy now. I'd love to see maybe a team like Colorado, right? And to me, it doesn't matter as much. Like, it's good point by you for the fit, but Colorado's got a younger hockey team. They maybe haven't been through as much before, but a very talented team. Maybe go there and be in the locker room, be in that calming influence that I think he could be for those guys that get in a tough spot. So, but no, is there anybody else you want to send to Pittsburgh? I mean, you've got Kovalchuk going to Pittsburgh.
I got 3 guys going there, and that's never going to happen. I readily admit that, and plus, it's not a good fit. They don't need his good attitude in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
the same thing in Boston. Like, everybody's been talking about, boy, wouldn't he look good with the Bruins? And he would. He
starts his career there and then goes back.
He starts his career, finishes there. He wins a cup, maybe. It's a possibility.
You can get Barry Trotz to Pittsburgh too. You've got everybody else going there.
They don't need Barry Trotz. They got
but you got everybody else. You got everybody going to Pittsburgh. I just thought maybe your guys.
Yeah, no. I mean, I not everyone. I just think guys that can help them offensively. Yeah. I've had this theory about the Penguins for years, and that is that for as long as I can remember, dating back to even the Lemieux era, they've always been one forward short. Like if you look at it, they always have they've always had two, going back to the old days when they had, even Yager and Lemieux and Ron Francis. Like it always seemed like they needed one more winger to play with Francis and Lemieux. And when they had Crosby and Malkin, for as long as I can remember, they've always needed like one more winger, just one more winger they could have fit there. So I've made it my business to try to get that winger, for years. Rutherford,
and they are like that with defensemen too. These last two cups that they won, particularly the first one of the two, I think we were all talking about that they just didn't have enough defense.
And they fill in. They made trades, but Letang was out, if you remember, when they won that cup, and everybody looks at him as pretty indispensable on that team. But it would be nice, just getting back to Joe Thornton, to see him. I actually think you're absolutely right in terms of the teams we've mentioned, because I've heard him mentioned as well with Tampa Bay. I think the team that could use him the most would be Colorado.
Yep.
Because they're a younger team. Yep. Like, even though the Tampa Bay Lightning, haven't won, they're a veteran team. Like they have Stamkos and they've got guys that have been around the block. They don't really need his leadership. It's nice to have. You can't get too much leadership, but they don't need that. But Colorado could benefit, by that.
Hold on a sec. So you don't think Tampa Bay needs the leadership?
I think they need some leadership. You can always take more, but I'm just saying they don't need it as desperately.
No, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think that's the thing that's missing with Tampa Bay. For some reason, when I watched that team, I go, listen, there's no question about the talent level. They've got their game going now. They're playing great. They struggled early. But what concerns me is, do they have that guy at some point in the playoffs that stands up and says, okay, we're in trouble here now. This is what we're going to do, or makes a big play. That there's never going to be another Mark Messier, but that Mark Messier kind of guy that guarantees a win. I think that's what's missing with Tampa. I don't see that.
Who was that guy last year in St. Louis?
Who's that guy last year? Actually, I think they did it by committee. I think they had a lot of that team.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Usually what I would say on that is the same thing. Well, sometimes, you got to win before we recognize who that guy is. I think Stamkos is a good leader. I mean, I don't think it's his fault that they haven't won. I don't.
I'm going to disagree with you. I like the player a lot. I like Stamkos, but I don't see him as a leader. I don't. I don't see, like, Ryan McDonough was here with the New York Rangers, and a fantastic person. Don't know him that well, but spent time with him. He's a really good person. I don't see.
What about Hedman?
What's that?
What about Hedman? You don't think any of those guys can lead?
No, I don't think that they are the leader. I don't think that they. And you make a great point that maybe that will change here down the road. I played against Steve Yzerman and Mary Lemieux when they were younger, and they weren't the players they became later on in their careers, obviously. But right now, I don't see that happening. I just don't see that Tampa has that guy that's going to be that guy that stands up in the locker room and those big moments and really takes charge with the team.
Well, one of the reasons we can always talk about that is that you can never prove or disprove that until they win. It's I always talk about Ed Belfour couldn't win the big one until he won the big one, and then all of a sudden he was a Hall of Famer.
Alex Ovechkin, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, you beat the drum hard against Alex for a long period of time, and then he kind of showed he can do it. I mean, even in Detroit, like Steve Yzerman,
absolutely,
they being the fan base, blamed Yzerman in the 80s for not being able to do it. And then all of a sudden he transformed into a Warrior. Now, usually it's more subtle than that in terms of, like, you can't really sort of identify what exactly they did that allowed them to go. But in Yzerman's case, you could. He became a different player. And I think that was a lot to do with the injuries he was going through, and but he went from just an unbelievable offensive star to a Warrior.
Exactly, yeah.
Where he
I have to post a comment from one of our listeners, one of the all-time great team players that's I've ever played against, Brad's Motor City Smitty, making a comment about Jean Beliveau there. So if anybody watched Brad Smith play back in the, I guess all in the 80s when we played against each other, and I'm going to say this is a total compliment to him, so I hope he hears this, and it may come out a little strange at first, but like he's one of those guys I remember looking back, got more out of his talent level than most other guys in the National Hockey League. He just was all heart, loved playing. I didn't love playing against him all the time, but great player. So
I like Brad Smith too. He used to sit next to me in the press box at Joe Louis, and we had more than one chat. And he was a fun guy. He was a fun guy. Likes to be. I want to see exactly, because I think of Beliveau as a gentlemanly player, but I want to see what year. That had to be early in his career, is what I'm guessing. Yeah, when that happened. But just getting back to Thornton, he clearly could help some, team, and
absolutely,
and I think he could help really any of those teams that we've talked about. But it'd be interesting to see. What Brad thinks about whether he could help. I guess that would be. He's still with Colorado, right?
Yeah, he's got to be careful of scouting.
It was early in his career. He had 143 minutes in 55, 56, and then he followed that up with 105. He played with the stick up a little bit though.
Brad Smith, the hockey encyclopedia there.
That's great. So I actually didn't know that. Wait, another guy that was like that, Stan Mikita late in his career was a gentleman player, but when he started out, he played with a stick high as well. And Stan Mikita was one of my, the late Stan Mikita was one of my favorite players. He told just an unbelievable story about, Gordie Howe and how tough and how calculating Gordie was. He told me that early in his career, the guys on the bench said, whatever you do, stay clear of Gordie. And he goes, what's he going to do to me, that I haven't done before. So he said, I carved him a little bit. And he said, I let it go. And he goes, Gordie never said a word. And he goes, he never came after me. And after the game, I said to the guys, he's real tough. He didn't say a word about it and never came back after me. And he goes, the following year, he said, he stayed away from me. I thought, well, I kind of showed him. He said the second year, he said, I'm going in the corner. I came up, and he goes, I needed like 40 stitches. And he goes, I had no idea what happened to me. And he said, as he was skating out, Gordie said, that's for what happened 2 seasons ago.
Oh, he said that too. That's
yeah.
That's interesting. That's funny how we would wait that long, right? Like most players.
Oh, that's for sure. For sure. Anyway, let's move on here. We've gotten a little carried away. As
Ovechkin?
Case. I want to talk about Ovechkin, who got another hat trick. I believe it was hat trick number 27. Yeah. And here's his team again in the thick of it, things. And Ovechkin gets goals 38, 39, and 40, which in itself is remarkable when you consider he's 34 years old. He's had 8 50-goal seasons and another season in which he scored 49. So you can really say if he gets 50 this year that he's had, 10. I mean, he didn't really, but he's had the equivalent of 10, 50-goal seasons. And now, he's at 698 goals in his career. Yeah. And here's the remarkable thing. He's played 1,137 games. Yeah. He doesn't even wait. It's not that he gets 1 goal every 2 games. It's better than that. Yeah. He's just scoring at an incredible pace at a time when we say all the time how hard it is to score a goal.
Sure. And imagine you're a team that's going to play against him. Now, every team does this. They study film. They say, okay, well, how do we beat the Washington Capitals? Well, one of the things, just like you're saying, we need to be able to stop Alex Ovechkin. On the power play, he pretty much, although I saw a game the other night where he was switching up. He was on the other side. He was on the strong side, not his offside. But pretty much always stands in the same spot in the power play. Everybody knows what he's going to do. Everybody knows he's going to shoot, but he keeps on scoring. That's the thing that's amazing to me, especially nowadays with the advanced coaching and the technology, the videos, all the game preparation they have, and he still does it. And to me, that's one of the things that's so great about it. It's not like you said, it's not like it's spotty too. Yes, he's not perfect. He's not going to score every game. Maybe he goes for a stretch a few games where he doesn't score, but it just seems like, how do you stop him? It's not like teams aren't prepared. It's not like they don't know that he's going to score goals. It's not like they don't know what he does out there. The one-timer, the pull it in, shoot between the defenseman's legs, all that stuff. It happens all the time, and he keeps on scoring. And so, great goaltenders. It's not like somebody's doing something wrong out there.
Well, I know. Marc-Andre Fleury told me one time that, when he was in Pittsburgh, he said the amazing thing about him is you know exactly where he's going to set up. You know how hard he shoots the puck. You can get yourself ready, and he still blows it right by you. Yeah. Like he said, it's really remarkable. And he said it's the release, it's the heaviness of the shot. He goes, it feels like it picks up speed as it goes. He goes, I know it doesn't. But, he said everything about it. And it's the passion, the love of the game.
Yeah.
Like there's even when people said that he wasn't equipped to be a good leader, nobody ever denied that he didn't have passion for playing. Like he loves to play. He's a rink rat. He's a Yager type guy. He likes to come to the rink.
Yeah.
When I was at USA Today, we had a guy that worked on the staff that was a goalie, and we put him in against Ovechkin. Now, if you said that against other stars, they'd roll their eyes and say, I don't need to do that. But Ovechkin said, sure, I'll do it. And he took shots on the guy. He had some fun. And I think as he's gotten older, he's gotten better because he was a little moody when he was young. I always used to say, well, what do we got today? We got the good Ovi or the bad Ovi in terms of, having to interview with him. And if you had the bad Ovi, it was not going to be a fun interview. But, now he's made peace with his game. He's very comfortable. You can go up and, chat with him and everything else. And I'm really now interested in the chase of Wayne Gretzky, of Ovi. And I'm really torn on it because I like Ovi a lot, and I want to see him challenge it, but I also like Wayne, and I don't want to see that record fall. So I don't know how I feel about it. But
just the fact that somebody is going to come close to a Wayne record.
Yeah. And I think I told this story on a previous podcast when I did the Player of the Decade. I think you could flip a coin between him and Sid. Yeah. Crosby has had an incredible 10 years. And if you want to say it's Crosby, and normally I'm more associated with Crosby than Ovechkin in terms of, I've probably written more about Crosby than Ovechkin. But in this case, I just thought because Ovechkin might topple a record that people said would never be broken. Yep. I just said, I'm going to say it's Ovechkin. But I'm totally fine with anybody who believes it's Crosby because, a week from now, I might think it's Crosby. But here's what I want to bring up. First of all, how many goals do you think? He's got 40 now. Could he get 60?
So we're roughly, 30 games left?
Yeah. So you have to get 20 and 30.
Yeah. Well, here's going to be the thing. Do they, when they get down to the last 5 games and they've got their playoff spot locked in, do they play him the same way? Do they keep throwing him out the ice as much? Do they pull him back and miss some games? That's why I think he won't get 60. I think he'll get to 55, but to me, that'd be the one thing that stops him get to 60.
Well, I mean, by the end of this season, let's say you give him 15 more. So he'll be at 713, which will put him right behind Phil Esposito for 6th on the all-time list. Now, and it's still going to leave him, 894, 181 short of Gretzky, and he's 31 He's 34 years old. Right. So 5 more years at 40 goals. Yeah. Is 200. Yeah. That puts him by him at 39. Can Alex Ovechkin still score 40 at 39?
It's not slowing down, right? He's still.
Yeah, it sure feels like it. Like right now, it does. It feels like he's still in the prime of his career.
Well, you know what I like about him too is that, and why I think I was hard on him before he finally learned how to win and finally scored won a Stanley Cup. I just felt like like you said, he always played with passion. He always played hard. But it was never under the right for a purpose. Like he would run across the ice to try to make a big hit, thinking that was going to help his team. Like I honestly felt like he thought it was going to help his team to do it. But he would take him so far out of position to try to make that big play, to try to make an impact. And that's not what they needed. He's now learned to be a smarter player. Yes, he still takes the hit when it's there. There's no question. He's still that strong guy. But he's smarter. Like he saves more of his energy for offensive production instead of trying to run around all over the ice. I just think he's got to be so much more of a smarter player. That's why I think he'll get, potentially get those 200 more goals because he's that much smarter of a hockey player. And he's a physical beast too. He's not some like I mean, this is total respect to Wayne. Wayne wasn't a physical beast. He was a all heart, ton of skill, vision for the game, all that kind of stuff. Ovechkin is just a beast. Now, if he starts getting hurt, that could change that. But right now, when I watch him play, I just think he's gotten smarter as he's gone on. So I think his goal production is going to actually continue. Well, maybe not get better, but I don't think it's going to drop off at all.
Yeah, and his durability has been another thing. Yep. About him, like he stays healthy, and he's a big guy, which is really remarkable. And I've said this many times, but it bears repeating. I think he'll be a guy that once he's gone, we'll even treasure him more than we do now. I think we don't necessarily appreciate like how good he's been, but I think when he's gone, we're going to go, wow.
Yeah, definitely.
What an incredible player!
Here's something I really it makes me think when I think of their team and them winning their last cup, a subject that we wanted to touch on. These trade deadline deals, like it's a major bone of contention for me, where it happens all the time, and I've got a ton of respect for these general managers, where they constantly feel like they need to load up on this talent to win a Stanley Cup. And I'm thinking to myself, when has the last time that a team won a Stanley Cup that they went out and loaded up on talent at the trade deadline and it actually worked? I just don't like when I think of teams like when I think of Washington, we're talking about Ovechkin right now. When they won, their talent level to me was less than it probably had been in the previous 5 seasons. And any moves that they made were like third or fourth line guys like a Dominic Smith-Pelly. Now, again, they already had a very talented lineup, but I watch this happen every year, where this talk about teams going after players to load up for the playoffs, and I just don't see it where it's worked.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not alone on that. I mean, Brian Burke has said for years that the GMs make more mistakes on July 1st and at the trade deadline than they do any other days of the year, because you just get caught up, and part of it is the expectation of the fan base.
Yeah.
There's no other trade deadline quite like the hockey trade deadline.
Sure.
And I always say everybody wants presents on Christmas Day. And, the board teams want to trade the veterans. Like in Detroit, everybody's all excited. They want a trade, getting rid of the excess, players. They want to see Trevor Daley and Mike Green being shipped out, getting draft picks, so that there's room for the younger players next season to come up. They want to see Morris Sider come up and play regularly next year. So even the bad teams, have expectations. And but I think your point is well taken, and it's especially in today's NHL, where you got to stockpile those draft picks. You got to find that diamond in the rough that gives you scoring depth. And if you're trading, and I'm certainly guilty of this. I tend to say, well, just give them a third or fourth round pick. Well, if you give up too many of those,
absolutely,
you don't have the depth that you need as you move forward.
You notice that too at the draft, right? When you're sitting there and you're watching the draft, and those decisions they make during the season, now all of a sudden when you're actually at the draft, and now they're saying, "Oh, this team doesn't have the third round pick; they don't have the fourth round pick." Right. And everybody is making these picks, and you're realizing now you can see why you don't want to do that all the time. So I mean, I look at the teams that, I think we've talked about it. We're pretty consistent. I think, Boston, St. Louis, Washington, Pittsburgh, like you have said so often. I think Tampa now is back at it. But there's also, the teams like, I think Winnipeg is that kind of team, that hard to play against team. Vancouver, I think they're probably too young, and I just think if I'm those teams that I think of those real contending teams, maybe add that depth guy, but and then we talk about Joe Thornton. I mean, I think a team like Tampa that doesn't have enough leadership, or a team like Colorado, that kind of thing, I think that makes sense for a team. But these big deals, and again, we saw Columbus do it last year, and you understood why they did it. They'd never been in the playoffs. They wanted to get in the playoffs. They did it. That was a purpose, and it worked. But there's another team, Columbus, right now. Like, holy smokes! I know we've talked about it before, but John Tortorella? How does he not win Coach of the Year this year?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty remarkable, and Elvis Merzlikins has been unbelievable. 11-2, 951 save percentage, 162 since Korpisalo went out with an injury. Yeah. Like he's just been unbelievable. They've moved into third place. He won a big game, 1-0 over Bobrovsky. And of course, the irony of that is that he comes in to replace Bobrovsky, who leaves as a big free agent. Everybody thought, oh, well, a lot of folks had Columbus out of the playoffs.
Oh, I did. I thought there's no way. They're terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously they've performed quite well. One other team before we go, I want to mention real quickly is the Florida Panthers. And, I mean, I think your point is a really good one about, making a trade just to make a trade because it's the trade deadline makes no sense. But, if you have needs and, Dale Talon came out, and I believe it was Pierre LeBrun. He said that they're looking to find a defenseman to pair with Aaron Ekblad, who's, played pretty well. And they had Matheson playing with them. And, Talon said bluntly, Matheson's been too inconsistent. And he wants a more consistent player. Well, that you can appreciate a little bit more. Yeah. When you have a specific need, and I think they want to make a hockey trade as opposed to a rental. And there's been a lot of discussion that Hoffman would be the guy that they would move. So trading a forward, they believe they have some depth up there, good forward in terms of a productive forward anyway, and hope to find a defenseman. But those trades I always find are difficult to make. Nobody wants to go out
the same thing. Oh, I agree.
Yeah, you can find scoring. You can convince yourself that you want to have leadership by committee. You can convince yourself also that you can score by committee. Right. I don't believe that always works, but you can convince yourself that will work.
And the idea that you're going to go out and not just find a good defenseman, but find a defenseman to fit with another defenseman. I'm kind of not buying that from Dale Talon. I think he's up to something. I think he's trying to light a fire out under some of these other defensemen, thinking they're not playing well enough. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go out and get some other defenseman and take your spot. Because I just don't, as a former player for Dale, I just think, I just don't think that works. Well, pretty tough to make that work.
You might be onto something. It's pretty calculating. Just like Nancy Pelosi, that wasn't spontaneous when she tore that up. That was planned.
So I saw her rip up the State of the Union.
I did. Yeah, she ripped it up right at the end.
What'd you think?
At the time, I thought, we don't need this, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not made up for that kind of.
We should do a whole show on politics one time, like you and I being on the opposite side of the aisle. We'll just go at it.
Yeah, for sure. Although we both fit our MO. Most hockey players are conservative Republicans, and most journalists are liberal.
That's right.
And I'm liberal, and you're a hockey player, and you're a conservative.
Yeah.
So we would be able to do that. Yeah. Anyway, I don't think there's anything else we want to talk about. I want to get into with the Buffalo Sabres. We'll do that next week. Just in about they're starting to be that team that just can't dig out of the hole. Just like the Edmonton Oilers, just like the Arizona Coyotes. And hopefully the Coyotes will dig out this year, but they can't seem to dig out. And, as you mentioned, they got Jack Eichel, and that's just got to be totally frustrating. But that's for next week. Totally. You've been listening to the Laidlaw and Allen Report. I'm Allen. He's Laidlaw. We'll be back next week.
See you next week, guys.